it'll probably be called World War III 10 years from now as historians look back on this. So I think it's accurate to say that this is a global conflict, and we should think strategically about that.
Hi, I'm Fergus Macphee, and welcome to the Trump Report. You can watch us every day, Monday to Friday, on our YouTube channel, and you can also listen and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Joining me today is General Ben Hodges, former Commanding General of the US Army in Europe. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
Fergus, thank you for the privilege. I'm doing good.
Ben, I want to start with the staggering footage that I think we've all seen. It came out yesterday of the Iranian warship being sunk by a US submarine. Now, Pete Hegseth said afterwards that it was the first sinking of a torpedo since the Second World War. That's not actually correct. I think most people in the UK know that the British, of course, sunk the Belgrano during the Falklands War. But even so, I mean, like I said, the footage is quite extraordinary. Is this one of the most sort of consequential acts of war you can remember?
Well, when I saw the video, it is immediately reminded me of things I had seen from the Second World War, in movies or in video of what U-boats were doing or our submarines were doing. So it was kind of I don't know if shocking is the right word, but like, wow, I've never seen that, in my lifetime. I think it does raise questions about, number one, what is the purpose? What is our mission? Against Iran, is it to hunt down every Iranian that's part of the IRGC or the Iranian military, wherever they are? I'm not against destroying the Iranian Navy. They have been nothing but trouble for all of us for decades. But it's a different perspective that I hadn't considered before. And honestly, I didn't even know I didn't even think about that we still did torpedoes against ships. I mean, it just seems something from the past, but obviously effective, and obviously the Iranian Navy not prepared for that. And I imagine the Chinese took note of this.
I want to get into what Pete Hegseth says in a minute, but what do you think the mission is? You kind of raised it then.
I have to say it's not clear. We've heard a lot of justifications in the days leading up to this past Saturday. No nuclear weapon for Iran, prevent them from being able to produce long-range ballistic missiles, prevent them from supporting terrorism, protect the protesters. I mean, all of these things, none of them are bad, but when you just kind of pile them up like that, it doesn't sound like a strategic end state that should drive the planning and execution of operations. And if you don't have an end state, that's how you end up getting into situations that you either didn't anticipate or wanted to avoid, such as, well, now we got to put troops there. So I think this is for the military planners. Obviously, it makes their job harder because they're trying to think, how do we give the president so many different options? Logistically, that's tough. And then for the people who are responsible for thinking about, okay, what comes after, what comes next, also, I think they haven't gotten much clarity.
Do you think putting troops there, boots on the ground, is likely?
It seems very unlikely because the president's domestic political base is so against it. And this is exactly the kind of thing he said he would never do. And his supporters said that he would never do. So from a domestic political standpoint, it seems unlikely. From a military standpoint, it seemed like a disaster. I mean, why would we do this? If I'm the commander of the land forces or the land component, of course I'm going to be asking, okay, what is my job? What am I there just to secure a foothold somewhere that we need for something else, or are we there? Are we going after a particular facility, or is it to destroy what's left of the IRGC, which is not going to be sitting in one place? I mean, I would really want to hear the intended strategic outcome if I was going to be the commander of the land force.
Well, I said I'd talk about Pete Hegseth's comments. Oh, sorry, they were actually JD Vance's comments. He said earlier this week that the US's war aims are to end Iran's nuclear ambitions, and it's not going to be a protracted conflict. But yet, already in a week, we've seen explosions in the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Azerbaijan, the British base in Cyprus, Beirut, and that Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean, to name a few. It seems to me that it's a little bit late for that.
Yeah, and look, as always, the enemy gets a vote. I think everybody was impressed and proud, and that they were able to destroy the supreme leader and all the people around him. And this guy, was responsible for the death of thousands of his own people, not to mention hundreds of American and British and other soldiers and civilians. The the thing is, I don't know that the supreme leader was actually the leader in terms of having control. Um,
Figurehead, is that what you mean?
I don't want to say figurehead. I don't know enough about the internal workings, but I think that the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, they're the real power there. I mean, they have got stuck into every facet of Iran's government, economy, intelligence, security, etc. Of course, there's still an Iranian army, armed forces, but the IRGC is the real power there. And so for them, victory is survival. If they survive, they will think that they have actually won this war, that the great Satan, the United States, plus Israeli Defense Forces, could not eliminate them. So I think their tactic or their strategy is to outlast us, to make the war as big as they can possibly get, to hit targets all over the Gulf region, to drag in as many people and nations as possible, to cause as much disruption to the flow of energy, and not to mention air traffic. The hundreds of thousands of people stranded there in the Middle East. That's all designed to put pressure on the U.S. government indirectly, so that the U.S. government says, "Okay, we're done. We did what we wanted, and we're out." And so I think that tells me. And last point, the fact that all of these counterstrikes happened after the supreme leader was taken out, that reflects continuity of command. And so I think we got a long way to go.
It's one of those tactics. I mean, might the Iranians be thinking, if we're going to lose the air war, the US might keep striking us inland. But one thing they can do and are still doing quite successfully at the moment is shutting off the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, that's the. That's the ultimate pressure point against the West. Now, the Chinese, of course, are the ones that really depend on oil and gas coming out of there. The U.S. is self-sustaining when it comes to that, but I can imagine that the U.S. or some people would be thinking, if we could deny China the ability to get oil and gas out of the Persian Gulf, that makes China's strategic situation a little bit more challenging. That might be useful leverage later on. Uh, on the other hand, this disruption also bumps up the price of oil, which is a benefit to the Russians, who are desperate for revenues coming from the sale of oil to China and India and other customers. So none of this is, black and white. It's so much of it is intertwined. And I'm not 100% certain that the desired end state from the Israeli perspective is the same as the desired end state from the Oval Office.
Where does the discrepancy lie between those two?
Now, this is just my personal assessment. So the prime minister didn't call me up, the president didn't call me up, but I think the Israelis are looking at this as a once in a generation opportunity. That the Iranians are so weakened by everything that has happened over the past months, and now with what's happened over the past days. I would imagine that if I was an Israeli planner, I'm thinking now we can once and for all completely destroy the IRGC, their ability to support Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, and we could create long-term security in the region if we keep going until we're satisfied. I think on the American side, the president, our president, has not clearly identified the end state. He's talked about some goals that's different from an end state. And so I think he, number one, probably doesn't feel obligated to do that. And number two, that gives him the flexibility to say, okay, I've had enough. I declare victory. We've destroyed this, this, and this, and we're out. And that keeps his domestic base happy as well.
And you really think, I mean, Donald Trump's famously unpredictable. You think he would just leave and then let Israel continue on?
I would say he is very predictable because that's exactly the kind of thing I would expect him to do. It's not, he's famously not normal for sure. You know, all the traditional norms that happen from presidents and heads of government and state, but because of what we've seen him say and do over the past years, something like that is entirely predictable. I mean, he has said in recent days, yeah, you know, I could leave whenever I want. We might be a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. I don't know. All the people we thought were going to be the next governor, they're all dead. Maybe the next ones are dead. I mean, that doesn't sound like a really swept up plan. It sounds like somebody that has that imagines that they have lots of off ramps.
I think that's a fair point. Now, apologies to quote yourself back to you, but I looked at some previous interviews you've done with our partners over at Times Radio.
That's not fair.
No, it's not. I'm not going to catch you out or anything, but it was last summer during the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. You said that at that point you didn't think the Trump administration was equipped to deal with a war with Iran. How are you feeling now that we are sort of 6 days into that very conflict?
Well, of course, militarily, they are. Stand fast some potential challenges with precision munitions and Patriot interceptors, but I'm very proud as a retired U.S. Army officer. I'm very proud of our Navy and our Air Force and also our air defenders out there, what they have accomplished, just massing such a force. The thing about Navy that has always impressed me is how they can generate combat power while underway. I mean, it's amazing. But the government, the administration, I should say, I don't think has the strategic mindset to do what's required here. The fact that here we are now, and you get, depending on who you talk to, you get a different explanation of what the objective is, what the purpose is. And also, if you ask Senator Graham, for example, one of the staunchest supporters of the president, he has an explanation. And so that's what I mean when I say they're not equipped. I mean, from a strategic thinking. And unfortunately, because the administration completely, no, it's not right. The administration made so many changes inside the government in the first months that stripped out a lot of long-standing capabilities in the State Department, for example, to include, by the way, information, radio, Voice of America, those kinds of organizations that could be speaking to Iranians in their own language, gone. The National Security Staff. Now you've got the Secretary of State is also the National Security Director. I mean, both of those are back-breaking full-time jobs. So we don't have the normal sort of structures in place. And then, of course, what's been most interesting to me, because of the disdain that the administration has for allies that they demonstrate over and over, and now they're shocked to find out that, maybe UK, maybe Spain, maybe other countries are not so keen to let us use bases there, that we just took that for granted, or that people might be questioning the legality of what we're doing. And now it looks like we're even asking the Ukrainians for some help. So that's what I mean.
I'd like to get your personal opinion on that. I mean, it's maybe to be expected slightly more from Spain and the administration. What do you think about the current situation with the US and the UK being at loggerheads so much?
Well, look, first of all, relationships between nations are much more than between the Oval Office and number 10. So that's the relationships go so deep and so every facet of our public and private lives. And I'm very confident that our militaries, our intelligence services, uh, these things, very solid, regardless of whatever sort of political upheavals or friction there may be at the very top. Secondly, I think every head of government has a responsibility to protect their national interests, and it's not new that those decisions would be affected or colored by domestic political concerns. So you can be sure almost every decision that President Trump makes is with a view to his base. So I think the burden is on us, the United States, to make the case to our allies why we would need to be able to use a base for this kind of mission.
I guess the only issue with that is this, surely this operation would go against kind of the instincts and the rhetoric that Trump got in with before when he was campaigning to be president, right?
Completely. That's, and as of a New York Times poll today said that 58% of Americans are against the war. And here we are on I think day 5 or 6. And after, frankly, from a military standpoint, it's going pretty well. Yet those against is above 50%. And the ones who are who are supportive, is 20%. So I think the president is doing something now that he had campaigned on not doing.
I don't want to be too alarmist, but when we started talking about the ship that was sunk by the submarine torpedo. It was sunk in the Indian Ocean, I think about 25 miles off the southern coast of Sri Lanka. Are we sort of starting to see this expand into more of a global conflict?
I would say that there already is a global conflict. Now, I don't want to. I want to keep this so that it's a useful way to think about things. It'll probably be called World War III 10 years from now, as historians look back on this. I don't think World War II was referred to as World War II while it was happening. But clearly, what's happened, Russia's attack on Ukraine and its continued gray zone operations against the rest of Europe. Russia is at war with all of Europe, kinetically and non-kinetically. Iran has been helping Russia kill Ukrainians, as well as using Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis to kill Israelis and Americans and lots of other people, and disrupting international traffic. North Korea is has been providing people and technology and ammunition to support Russia and Iran. Not people to Iran, but ammunition. And then China, of course, is providing capabilities to Russia, while also paying or helping Iran with its technology and threatening all of our interests in the Indo-Pacific. So I think it's accurate to say that this is a global conflict, and we should think strategically about that.
And like everything you've just laid out, are you sort of saying that all of these are mini wars or mini conflicts within one overall structure?
When Churchill and Roosevelt met back in January 1942, or right after Pearl Harbor, so December 41, January 42, for the Arcadia Conference. Great Britain had been at war for years already. The United States had just been drawn into the war by the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Most Americans had no desire to get into another European war. They had no desire. Most Americans were recent European immigrants. They said, that's why I left. They didn't want to go back. But they were ready to fight Japan. And instead, President Roosevelt, talking with your prime minister, they realized that this was going to be a global conflict, and that to be successful, they had to defeat Germany first. So then they could turn to Japan. And so that kind of strategic thinking enabled Roosevelt then to turn to the American people and say, look, no, we have to defeat Germany first. And they got industry going. So yes, these things are connected. And I believe if you help Ukraine defeat Russia, then that really isolates Iran even more. And it would also send a message of deterrence to China. But that means the United States and all of Europe would really have to get stuck in to help Ukraine.
I don't want to be too simplistic, but if we do look at World War II, like you just outlined then, if we said perhaps, that was Germany's war, I mean, whose war is this? Is it the US's, Russia's, China's?
Well, I would say that each of the actors here has their own strategic interests. For the United States, I think, let me back up. I think that control of energy and denying energy to adversaries is a big part of all of these things. The United States doesn't need oil and gas from the Middle East. China does. So if you can deny China, or if you can control it so much somehow that that creates a problem for China, that may be some leverage that the U.S. that this administration is thinking about. I don't know that, but it would fit. I think the Chinese are watching very carefully to see what the U.S. is capable of doing. They probably are counting how many Patriot interceptors are fired, how many Tomahawks are launched, so that they can have an assessment of what we still have. But they're also, I'm sure, observing capabilities that the U.S. military is employing that are like, okay, well, that's pretty significant.
We're running out of time, but I just want to move on to something slightly different while I've got you. Because both the New York Times and CNN were reporting last night that pro-American Iranian Kurds, armed by the CIA, were preparing for an incursion on Iran. Now, since then, both the White House and the Iraqi Kurdistan regional government have denied this. But just to give people context who maybe might not be aware, if that were to happen, does that kind of open another new front in this conflict?
Well, again, at the risk of sounding like a scratched record, my first question is, what are we expecting them to do? The Kurds are some of the most unlucky people on the planet because they have been, they're divided across Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. They don't all get along with each other, but the U.S. Has used them, employed them, and then stopped short of helping them achieve what they really want, which is a Kurdistan. Um, I think our Turkish allies really have a problem with the U.S. having support, giving weapons to the YPG, which is a branch of the Kurdish PKK. But because the YPG was so effective against ISIS, but yet they're an enemy of our ally Turkey. So I think the Turks will probably not be very amused to hear that once again we're giving a lot of weapons or giving some weapons to Kurds, even if they're in Iran versus operating in eastern Turkey. Um, I I don't know how this. I'm not against it if I know that there's a specific strategic aim, but to just try to create some disturbances in Iran, um, I don't know how that's going to contribute to a strategic end state that we're really after. There won't be enough of them to knock off the government for sure.
General Ben Hodges, thank you so much for joining us on the Trump Report.
Fergus, I really appreciate the opportunity.